Dear Faithus and Oahspe readers, I welcome you to this message. And the purpose of this video is to make clear that first, I really do respect and honor Oahspe as one of the most wonderful books ever published, ever channeled. And although it is imperfect, no book is immaculate, as Oahspe itself states. I think many of us, and I would include myself in that category, that many of us would say that Oahspe is certainly near perfect, or we hang on its every word pretty much, because we see the great wisdom and knowledge, spiritual knowledge that is presented within it. And so that's where I'm coming from. However, if we really are following our highest light, if we believe in what light is, that is, we take actions, we live our life according to that which is provable, which has evidence, then I think that means that all of us should never turn our reasoning motor off, that we always have to think things through as the truth becomes clear. And in this case, the truth that I'm communicating, that I've been reasoning about according to research, is that Dr. John Newbrough did not channel Oahspe. And there is evidence of this. There's proof. What I did is I went back to different newspaper stories and compared Dr. Newbrough's description of how Oahspe was channeled through him. And what is clear is that Dr. Newbrough gives different stories about how the book was channeled. And there are some real serious points to consider in this. And I also, what's helped me to take this point of view is there's so many stories of Newbrough mistreating people who went to Shalom. I mean, they signed over all their land and gave all their money. And when things went terrible there, they left, and they didn't get a dime back. They didn't get a single square foot of the land back. So basically, he did swindle people out of their life savings. And it was legal, apparently, because they agreed to do it, but that doesn't make it spiritually correct to, cheat people. So even though many of us have held a high opinion of him, like he's the Moses of our time, he's the great seer, the great prophet, and I think we want to idolize the person who we were thinking had channeled Oahspe, but I won't do that anymore, and I don't think you should either. And the reason is because it's obvious that he was not telling the truth, that he channeled it, okay? Okay, I'm looking at 4 different newspapers. We'll start with New York Herald Tribune, published April 13th, 1882. The title is Newbrough Interview. And concerning the purification period, he said, yes, there was one angel named Inu, who in 1873 requested the purification. Well, first of all, he named the angel by name, which is not what he said in the other accounts. And he said it's happened in 1873, a specific date. And yet in another account, it was stated it happened in 1870. Okay. The interesting thing about this report is that the channeling means was by pen. He channeled it not by typewriter. Okay. So that's a big change. I mean, okay. Anyway, April 13th, 1882, Newbrough. In the year 1873, while I was in a state of meditation, I was visited by an angel of light called Inu, who informed me that there was a book in the spirit world which contained a revelation from God, and that I was to be the medium for its translation into the English language. The angel's name was Inu, and he told me that the book was called Oahspe. Okay, different account. Then the New York Times, October 21st, 1882, Dr. Newbrough's Oahspe is the title of the article. And basically, in this case, no, there were no distinct angels, whereas Newbrough embarked upon purification due to this course of action, entering into his own head on his own. So there's no mention of angels at all in this account, okay? And the channeling means, he states, was by hand, by pen, no typewriter mentioned. He did not look at the text until after it was all done, and then he had someone type it all up. Okay. Again, New York Times, October 21st, 1882. I quote, "He began the work in the spring of 1880, an impression coming over him that it must be done. When he began, a bright light settled over his fingers. This would last 15 to 30 minutes, and when it disappeared, he could write no more. It always left his fingers cold and stiff. The work also could only be satisfactorily carried on at sunrise. This light," he continued, "seemed to impress him strongly. He thought it was similar to the light in the burning bush which talked with Moses, and which was the most common way of revelation to the sons of men. He continued his work for a year, lacking 2 weeks. I could not read it, for the light would not let me," he said, "and I did not know the contents of the book until it was ready for type." Okay, so this differs also. The burning bush, Moses, he's comparing himself to one of the great prophets of all time. And there's no mention of angels, just some light. Okay, that's so different. It isn't like he forgot it or something. This is a case of lying, making something up as he goes along. I mean, back then there was no internet. There's no way to research these things. And I think when you told one reporter something, you weren't really worried that someone was going to cross-check, fact-check you and see what you said in another newspaper. So anyway, the more you lie, the more you have to lie. Okay, a third account. This one is from the Banner of Light letter that Newbrough wrote to the Spiritualism periodical on January 21st, 1883. There's no title. "No, there were no distinct angels, whereas Newbrough embarked upon purification due to this course of action entering to his own head on his own." Okay, so this is like the New York Times October 21st edition article. However, in that there were no angels, but in this case, the typewriter is mentioned, okay? The typewriter. And so this is the one that's very famous and everyone knows it, but I'll read it. "So after a while, I took it into my head that wise and exalted angels could commune better with us if we purified ourselves physically and spiritually. Then a new condition of control came upon my hands. Instead of angels holding my hands as formerly, they held their heads over my head, and they were clothed with sufficient materiality for me to see them, and a light fell upon my hands as they lay on the table. Well, one morning the light struck both my hands on the back, and they went for the typewriter for some 15 minutes very vigorously. I was told not to read what was printed, and I had worked myself in such a religious fear of losing this new power that I obeyed reverently. One morning I looked out the window and beheld a line of light that rested on my hand, extending heavenward like a telegraph wire toward the sky. Over my head were 3 pairs of hands fully materialized. Behind me stood another angel with her hands on my shoulder. My looking did not disturb the scene. My hands went right on, printing. Okay, so when I say there were no angels mentioned, I mean concerning the first step of becoming purified. Newbrough did not have an angel appear to him and say, "Gosh, you better be pure to carry this out." Of course, it's saying that the angels came after he did achieve the purification. The angels came and did according to this narrative, the angels came and helped him complete the channeling. But the other version in 1882, New York Herald Tribune, there was a single angel, had a name. He was there before the purification started, and he asked Newbrough specifically to start the purification. However, in the Banner of Light letter, Newbrough says, "No, I just thought of it. It came into my head to start the purification process so that I would become worthy enough to channel Oahspe." And of course, in the New York Times of the 1882 October 21st version, it also came into his head. There was no angel mentioned to start the process. Okay, so again, 3 different versions. There's some correspondence between the 3, but overall, there's some major contradictive statements between them. Okay, another version. This one was not really published till later on. It comes from the Palmer, Mr. Palmer, who actually published a reprint of the 1882 version, and it contained within the Oahspe of that edition a diary notation from a friend of Mr. Newbrough, the grandson of a friend of Newbrough, and his name is Edwin Augustus Davis, and was entitled Addendum. And basically, considering the initial acquaintance for the purification process, this time there were angels, but not one angel named I knew. There were numerous unnamed angels, and it happened in 1870, not 1873, who, concerning the requests for the purification to make Newbrough capable of doing the channeling that was necessary. In this case, there was a typewriter, okay? And here's the text. I rubbed my eyes and saw that the room was lit up with pillars of a soft light, so pleasing to the eyes that it was indescribable. I saw great numbers of beautiful spirits or angels. They did not have wings. At 4 a.m. one morning, late in 1880, Newbrough was awakened from his slumber to find the same mysterious and beautiful lights filling his room. He sat up and demanded, "Am I worthy?" The same voice spoke, "You have done well. You have passed our test. We know that you feel more healthy. Now we want you to buy a typewriter and place it on this table. We will thereafter awaken you 1 hour before dawn each morning, and you will sit in this chair before the typewriter and put your hands on the keys. You will buy plenty of paper and keep it always ready to use." "I don't know how to use a typewriter," Newbrough said. "Angels, we will control your hands and arms and perform the task for you, so don't worry. You must not look at what is written until it is finished." There was further discussion, instruction, then the pillars of light dimmed and went out. In the morning of January 1st, 1881, having followed all instructions, the first writing session began at 4 a.m. As Newbrough later told it to his friend Davis, to my amazement, as I sat in the chair, my hands went up and started to pound at the keys. It seemed to me that I was half asleep, but I saw everything I was doing. I saw no spirits, but I knew they were using my body and thought. I looked at my hands and fingers, and they were going like mad. Then it occurred to me that it was fantastic. Okay, so in this case, Newbrough, unlike his letter to the Banner of Light, where he does see angels, but during the process of the actual channeling, he doesn't see the angels. There's just his hands, pounding at the keyboard. However, in the letter of the Banner of Light narrative, Newbrough said there are these pairs of hands that were over my head, and there's an angel with a hand on the shoulder. That's completely different, okay? So the process of the actual channeling is described differently. So if Newbrough did not channel Oahspe, well, who did? Where did it come from? We may never know. I admit that, but there is some research concerning his friendship with Madame Blavatsky, and she had another friend who had been storing psychic readings, and I guess I need to give another video on that, but the implication could be that she allowed him to take one of these anonymous manuscripts and then use it for his own purposes. Anyway, that's all I have to say about this. It's not that I'm trying to destroy Newbrough or that, well, it's just that we need to move on from him, okay? He's not the prophet of Jehovah. He's not a seer. He's just a kind of con artist, as far as I can tell. And the way he treated people was never good at Shalom. And I've got that. Some of that research I've already published, but talking about 50 people, and they all agree this guy was bad news. He basically took everything we owned, threw us out, and then said more bad things about us. Okay, there's nothing good about that. And Oahspe has plenty of texts about false prophets and false gods. And the reason they communicate to us about this is because they want to warn us to not make the same mistakes others have made and just follow people blindly just because of the circumstances. We don't have to follow Newbrough in our heart or mind. We should totally separate the path of Oahspe from Newbrough and just go right to the Creator. And why is this important at all? Well, Newbrough set up a lot of Masonic stuff and even put some of the Masonic stuff into Oahspe, which is another entirely big issue. But again, I've used linguistic software to prove this. And you can look at some of my other videos to see the proof if you want. What I really find is that once people believe something, you really can't change their minds. They, whoa, Newbrough channel, that's it, nothing, they can't say anymore. Oh, the Bible is the word of God. Yeah, we can't change. Yeah, that's the way it is. You can't change their mind. I can't change Baptists to stop believing in the Bible. I'm not saying there isn't truth in the Bible. There is. But you have to take every story and spiritual principle which is communicated. You have to judge it on its own merits. And that's what I'm saying here. Judge Oahspe on its own merits too. That's what Oahspe wants us to do, to think about this with logic and, based on what is the highest way to look at something. But so I'm asking, or my goal is to get people to stop looking at Oahspe as a religion, which needs all these rites that Newbrough put into Saphah, which are basically Masonic copycat versions of what they did, and not perfectly copycat, but certainly. There's a lot of stuff that's in there which takes us away from what Oahspe's true purpose is, which is to help us communicate more clearly with the Creator, to understand there are angelic heavens with a process of resurrection, which involves us in working to serve the poor and the distressed, and to not get too caught up in just saying a bunch of prayers and talking about Oahspe. It's not enough to talk about Oahspe. Somehow that means salvation, and that you know what the all the stuff about vortices and Aisu and something like that. No, you have to get out there and be the worker with good works. So, but Newbrough just set up a scam, basically, and he lied about it to make himself appear as though he was the guy who channeled it. I think his different accounts prove that he didn't. And there are other things he lied about during his life, which I don't have time to go into this video. So it's not like he was telling truth. There's plenty of evidence that he lied to people, okay? So, I mean, if you want to challenge me, I'd welcome anyone to challenge me on anything I'm saying at this point. And I'm open to changing. I mean, if I'm wrong about something, let's discover it. But I'm coming out of this video because I'm very sure of what I'm saying. And I'm saying it not to glorify myself. I don't care. What I'm saying is because I don't want people to follow this guy in Saphah. We have priests and priestesses and all that, just as Newbrough instituted through his original lodges. Those are all going against what Oahspe taught in the first place. So that's really what this is all about. Anyway, questions, comments are always welcome. May the Creator bless all faiths, everyone in our world, with love, happiness, and service. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye for now.